ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I want to talk to you for a little bit on this episode of Blue Boards about Under Falling Skies by a guy whose name that I cannot pronounce. I'll let you to try to pronounce that on your own time because me and foreign names don't mix. So, this is a game about invaders from space invading your space. In this case, they are invading Roswell. And you might notice by that quick pan up there that the game is actually really tall. And just to give you an idea of how tall it is, this panel here, the one dead center in the middle of the frame, its height is about the height of a playing card. So this is like 7 playing cards tall. And it's a bit rough to film it like this in this sense. And I'm not going to turn it into a sort of vertical view because I'm not that kind of YouTuber. So I'm just going to take the time to slide these out and down so that we can have a better view of the whole board. And there we go. So this is what a game looks like. I'm currently in what might be the simplest situation you can be in. I've got no extras. I'm defending the basic city, which is Roswell. I've excavated the majority of my base, but the aliens have been slowly working their way down. I did manage to hold off a couple of them last turn with a bit of well-placed anti-aircraft fire, but they're still coming, and I need to hold them back. And I need to hold them back long enough to get the research track done, which is what this green line of numbers up along the left here is. If I can manage to get to the top of that before either the aliens invade my airspace too much and take out my city, or the mothership itself completes its slow descent to the skull on this part of this sky tile, I win the game. Otherwise, the aliens get to have me for breakfast. How do I do this? By rolling that old chestnut, which is dice. Now, dice hate me, and I have always agreed that dice hate me, but thankfully this game does the Yahtzee approach, and I'd like to demonstrate how that works. So, at the beginning of each of your turns, you get to roll all of your dice. Pretty simple. Then you will take all the dice and put them in the view of the camera so that people know what I am looking at. And using these dice, you can put them on the spaces here that you have already excavated over here with the excavator. And in this case, we've got 3 basic spaces. We have the power generation, so we've got this one here, for example, or this one here, which is 2. We have research rooms, and we have jet fighter rooms. Now, the research rooms will let us move up this track, equal to the amount of points we put on the dice. So let's just say I put this one on this space here. So I would get 5 points. 6, the value on the die, minus the 1 that is listed on the part there. And that would let me move up 5 spaces, just as an example. So I could move that one up past the 3 and onto the 2, because that would be a total of 5. Or I could put it on a power space, which would generate me 6 power. So I could go from 1 power to 7 power. Easy enough. Or I could put it on a jet fighter space. And these jet fighter spaces would allow me to shoot down any of the aliens that are on one of these explosion spaces that have that number or less. So since I rolled a 6, and if any of these guys were actually on a 6, I'd be able to blow each and every one of them out of the sky. But if I had just say a 2, and I put that on there, for example, use the actual example, that would mean that I'd only be able to shoot down that space there, and that would be it. Just number 2, because apparently you're really good at hitting the aliens when they're in that one spot and nowhere else for some reason. You guys are awful jet pilots. However, doing this comes with its own unique side effect. For you see, the more powerful that your dice are, the more that the aliens get to advance on you. So just to use an example that I probably should for the purpose of making the game a little faster. So let's just say I generated 6 power here, for example, right? This ship here would move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces down, and he landed on an arrow, which means he would go to the right. The alien ships move down in that column depending on the value of the dice you put in that column. And so, the entire game is making these balancing decisions of where do I want the alien ships to come down at me the most? Where am I going to get the most chances to get them out of the way? Or will I be able to come up with something neat to get them out of the way? Because I've actually demonstrated something quite neat here. So, now that this column has no aliens in it, at least for this turn, or at least for next turn, you'll get what I mean in a minute, I'll be able to use this column more freely. I'll be able to put whatever dice I want on it and not risk any aliens coming down really fast. But now that this column has an alien in it right up in my grill, it means that I'll just move this down a little bit so you can see a little bit better that that's just the top of the space. You can see that if I put anything remotely high in these spaces here, it could become a problem. That guy could just come right down into my crap and blow me the hell up. However, there are some ways around this, of course, is to use lower dice. So just to use an example here, if I only wanted to use this one here as a 2, for this guy, for example, he'd only come down 2 spaces, and then he'd move to the left. So that would work, but I could also use this in a anti-air gun space, all of which exist at the top of pretty much every city as far as I'm aware. And these anti-aircraft guns will slow down any movements by 1 space. So this 2, for example, will become a 1, and he'll move down like that, and he'll move down like that. But that's created a knock-on effect where I have to move down the mothership now. And now that I've moved down the mothership and this guy got whacked by it, he goes back onto the ship. But this creates another opportunity for me. It's opened up the middle column. So now I can put whatever the hell I want in the middle column and not worry about it getting in the way. There is also one other limitation that I haven't said yet. It is that you can only have 1 dice for each of these columns. So I've put this 6 and this 2 down there. They are locked out to me for the rest of the round. So you can't force yourself to like send one alien down 30 times, have it blow up in the city, and then just use every other space. You have to be nice and even with all of your placements. There is one other consideration to be made though. Whenever you put down a white die, everything that remains in the die pool that you haven't put down yet gets re-rolled. So just to use an example here, I'm going to put this here to demonstrate how the excavator works. So now I get to re-roll these 2. It's another 4 and another 4. And I can now choose to put down this white die here to re-roll the other 4, or if I put the white die down second, I won't need to re-roll again. I will have only needed to re-roll once. So it presents an interesting quandary. We're going to have the power generation to do some research, and there's nothing to worry about here in this column. So the way I, reckon it, is we put down this one here, and go for that 50-50 shot, and see what comes out here. It's going to be a 1. Of course it's going to be a 1. So these guys move down by 4. We should have done that before we re-rolled, but 1, 2, 3. You will come to here, which will move the mothership down again. Oh boy. It's getting a bit closer. And then we move on to the resolving the rooms phase. All the anti-air dice can go back in there, and then we can do all the others any way we want. So if we didn't have any power to start off, we could use the power die immediately to get all 6 of that power back, and then we'd have the power to use for the rest of the dice. It's also worth noting that you can't put anything in front of the excavator, except for 1 die, which notates the distance that you have to go with it. So I can go 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th space in order to successfully excavate this and let me use all of this for my next round at the cost of 1 power. And then we have 5 to use here for the cost of 2 power, which will move us up on the research track 2 spaces, 3 and 2 for a total of 5. The mothership moves down once, always at the end of the turn, even if it's already moved, and then you execute what's over here. You've got add a white ship to the spawns, move the excavator back a certain amount of spaces, and move the research track back a number of spaces. So we actually have to move this back 1 now, and then the ships spawn. And the usual spawning rule is spawn them where they have the most amount of blank space below them. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. There are some more in-depth rules, but we don't need to get into that right now. And that's the way the game plays. You just keep rolling your dice, assigning all of your stuff, and you see if you win or lose through a combination of luck and strategy. And thankfully not that much luck, because again, Yahtzee rules, you get 2 free rerolls, which well, 2 free rerolls, I should say. You can always choose not to take them by very carefully pointing out your die placement. But the combination of 1 die per column and the combination of needing to balance your power generation, shooting enemies out of the sky, and getting up that research track, which is the only way you can win, makes this game quite a brain burner. And you will find yourself needing to think through the problem that is put in front of you quite a lot. And again, balancing the whole, should I get a good amount of usage out of one room, or should I try and hold them back, keep some anti-aircraft guns up there for a bigger move that I can guarantee myself to win. Meanwhile, this is constantly moving down all the time, dealing potential damage to you, and it keeps it interesting because there's a little bit of luck involved with how the dice are rolled, and it changes how the game goes every time because of how all the ships move down. And as I said, there's plenty of strategies to learn, like clearing out certain columns ahead of time by careful die placement, meaning that you can afford to put down a 6 on a certain column when you really need it. Learning when to excavate your base and deciding what of these techs to use and which one is more worthwhile to use. And even some stuff like willingly bringing the mothership closer to you, because when you bring the mothership closer to you by having a ship land on a mothership space, you skip the effect going on here. And if you need to keep your excavator right at the end because of this symbol here, and god damn it, because of that symbol there, and you think to yourself, man, I really need to keep all of this excavated, I'd rather bring the mothership closer to me. All of these little bits of strategy can help you out in the long run. And I find it to be quite enjoyable, even at this base amount, just because of that nice little balance of things you need to worry about, those strategies that you can learn, and one other thing. So, well, a couple of other things actually, but one other thing that is really notable about the way this game works is that you can vary the difficulty pretty much how you like. You want to vary the difficulty? Let me show you how. So let's just take the mothership off for a second and examine this sky tile. So this is one side of the sky tile. It's the easy side. Let's just focus in on it if we can, because my camera's autofocus has been playing the hell up lately. It's not great. There we go. So if we flip the tile over, I should say, sorry, you'll notice that it's a harder side, which introduces some higher research values, some more intense mothership effect values over on the right there, including dealing a damage to your city. And it makes the middle here a bit more difficult. There's a bit more places to shoot everything down, but there's also a bit more maneuverability. And if you put that down there, cool, that's easy. You've just made yourself a slightly harder game. And you can do this with every tile in the game. So if I want to flip over this tile, for example, my game is now a difficulty 2 game, because you can see the little black star over here and this little black star here. The amount of black stars you have determines the difficulty of the challenge. And it's also worth noting that the game recommends that, hey, if you fail the first time, try flipping over the city tile and giving it another go. And it does give you an extra special ability. Like, for example, when I get hit the first time, I get to move up a spot on the research track, which is a nice extra little bonus to have. But if you'll note, in the top right corner of that one there is a gold star, which brings the difficulty back down. So, it's this nice little balance of changing the difficulty of the way that you... changing the difficulty how you like, finding your way through the game, feeling out the difficulty that you want to go for. And it's not like it's just that, too. So, at the beginning of the box, yes, I said the beginning, you start with 3 different cities, and these actually determine how the game is built up in terms of your cities. So, you got New York and Washington, D.C. here. Again, I'm sorry about the focus, but you can see that they've got their own special abilities here. Like, you can only have 1 robot, we'll get to that. And on the first roll of each round, set one of the white dice to 6 instead of rolling it. So, we can actually swap these out now. So you'll notice on the right here, they've actually got some different letters compared to Roswell here, which had A and B. But we can swap out what we've got going on here to, let's say we want to do Washington, D.C. So we flip B up, so it changes the top of the base, and then we put at the bottom the tile C, which has changed the maximum amount of energy you can get and where you start, the maximum amount of health that you have, and every one of the facilities in the base. So it creates an entirely different challenge. And that makes the game very replayable, because it can make things a lot different in comparison. Like, for example, you can see here in Washington, D.C., how you've got a lot of extra energy, but you're going to need that extra energy, because this thing costs 5 energy and 3 dice, because you need to fill the entire room with dice in order to use it. That's rough. That is really rough, but you can make do with it. And then you've got New York City, which is, again, completely different, because we use the top side of tile C and the bottom side of tile A. So again, it changes everything. It changes the maximum amount of power, it changes the maximum amount of health, and it changes the amount of facilities we have access to. So, let's just move that back. You don't want to see my Fantasy Realms box, do ya? So, it's got a couple of other things to note of mention as well. You've got robots, which are represented by the blue die, that you can put down in any room and exhaust them in order to use them in that space. And they don't count as something that will set off the aliens that are approaching from the top. And they can be removed at any time, but it's really good to get a robot 6 and then plop it down somewhere like a power generator so you don't have to worry about power. Or get it while you're on a relatively low point of the research track, like over here, 2, 3, 4, 2. Like, get a 6, and that's like 6. That'll be like 6, and then that'll be like 5, and then it'll be like 4, and you'll have made a pretty good boost for yourself going on right there. So again, it just adds another layer to the strategy. And it does that really well. It gives you a lot of variety. It gives you a lot to work with, but that's just the base game. So the box very specifically comes packed with this manual, with this back page, oddly enough, facing straight up at you. But it's nice, because it's like, hey, this is what you need to start. That's everything that I've showed you so far. Everything else is a 4-chapter campaign. And if you don't want spoilers for the campaign, look away now, but I'll just say this. The campaign is really good, triples the value of the box, and I really appreciate the way that they designed it. And as a result of it, I am more than happy to recommend Under Falling Skies. With that said, let me show you what it does. So the way that it works is, it gives you some absolutely gorgeous art. Now, the cover is absolutely great, but this art is even better. And they've got great examples of it all over the game. And on the back of it, they've got The Invasion, Chapter 1, which tells you all of the new mechanics that you're going to have to deal with, some details about the cities you're going to defend, and then it tells you, create 4 piles of 4 of the cities that they give you, because they give you something like 12 new cities in this campaign throughout it, and another tile here, we won't worry about that for now. And it's like, create piles of cities, create piles of, where are they? Create piles of assistants, including, like, these are probably all references to some kind of sci-fi, but I like to think it's pretty damn obvious who that is a reference to. And then you create 4 different piles of scenarios. And then you take 2 of those piles, you pick one and discard the other. So it gives you a city, a challenge, and a player to play with. And these new cities come with their own fancy tricks. So just to give you an example, here's 2. Letter D here, comes with a double usage room, which you can use for both robots and air attacks. And then E here comes with command rooms, which can improve the value of the dice. So they're constantly adding new strategies as you go forward. And they give you a city, and they give you a, where are they? They give you a scenario. And these scenarios are all really well designed. Like, for example, sometimes they're really simple, like Battle for the Sky, which is how you've just got 6 purple ships to worry about instead of 5 coming back every time you shoot them down. And then there's satellites. Don't let the enemy get too close to them, because I'll send you backwards on the tracker. Or there'll be ones like, hey, every time you charge up your power, you need to add a temporary damage to the bottom of the stack, and if the bottom of the temporary stack and the top of the actual stack of damage meet up, you lose. God, that's a rough one. I'll tell you about that one in a bit. So just to give you an idea of how the game can kind of screw you on the luck, here is what Reactor Leak looked like for me during my game. it was Cairo, right? And every single time that you charge up your power, you have to cover up the bottom tile here. So every time I charge that up, I basically have less health until I choose not to charge. But I've also got really low top energy. Like, that's the lowest you can get in the game, I think. So I was having to charge up almost constantly, and I was bringing that up so quickly that it was pretty much sudden death. I died. I really did die. I lost Cairo, and I didn't even think I had a chance. So yeah, the game can kind of screw you on the luck, but at the same time, you've always got more cities to go save, so it's not that big of a deal. Or they'll even give you ones like Storm, which is like, hey, you can't shoot these guys in the bottommost ones. Or Kamikaze ships, which move really hard, well, hit really hard, I should say. The other one move really hard. And they have a lot of these different scenarios, right? And because of the way that they deal them out randomly, you're always going to have a random character, a random city, and a random scenario to deal with. And the characters can help you out. So for example, Lucia makes a robot last longer. Samantha makes the research track go further. Jackson helps you improve your dice. And then Clinton lets you shoot down any one alien ship that's already on a space, right? So they're all actually useful abilities. There's not like complete garbage that you have to learn to deal with. You do one, you discard the other. Then you go to the other two. You do one combination of, come on, focus, work with me here. Please focus. Please focus. That'll do. You do one combination of city, mission, and character, and then discard the other two. Then you do another one and discard the other one. But if you lose twice, you lose the city entirely. You do get a second opportunity with the damage side of the city, but it does bring down your final campaign score at the end, for reasons we'll get to shortly. Then, you take those characters that you met before, and in the second chapter, you get a new set of 4, but you also get to bring along one of the old set of 2 that you saved from the previous chapter, and bring them along in their upgraded form, which makes them even stronger, just by flipping them over. Then you continue on. You beat the crap out of everything that's coming your way, you try and survive all the way through, and then you get to chapter 4. So every other chapter works up the way that I have basically said it has, with a couple of differences here and there. Then you get to what's probably the cleverest part of this, the final battle. Chapter 4 is entirely the final battle. You have 10 purple ships, technically. You're using the ones, well, you have 5 purple ships and 5 white ships. And you've also got the satellite, making the research tracker just that little bit longer and that little bit more painful. But if you manage to take it out, you win the campaign. But if the purple ship, if the mothership makes it down, you lose that city. And then you have to go to another city that you had previously saved. Don't have any cities left? Congratulations, the Earth is lost. It's a really clever way of going about it. That simple randomization to give you that little bit of extra replayability of the campaign. Your score is determined by what the difficulty was, because you're allowed to start at difficulty 0, but as the game goes through, they actually give you harder versions of the sky tiles to swap out. So the game does actually get harder as it goes on, but again, you can still flip these ones over too to make it even harder. And you're allowed to choose at any time what the difficulty is. So you want to just run through on difficulty 0 or difficulty like 1, 2, whatever the tiles are going to require you to have. You can do that, and it'll get you more points at the end of the campaign, or you can just go through at your own leisurely pace. And since you're going through random every time, the circumstances will be different, your chances will be different, and it gives you just that little bit of extra replayability. But at the end of the campaign, you can use all of this stuff. So every individual scenario, you can even use the final battle if you like, which feels weird. You can use all of the assistants. You can drop them into a regular game. You can use all of the cities with all of their unique, just take out the advanced sky tiles there, with all of their unique city tiles and the different strategic purposes they'll bring in just a standalone game. And so it increases the replayability drastically if you want to just do a one-off, or if you just want to run through the campaign again. And it's great. no, it's genuinely a great way to do it, and it's really helped out by this absolutely fantastic art. I already showed you an example of the back of the sheet that tells you about that chapter of the campaign, but you also get all this really lovely art here about all of the things that happen in the middle of the campaign, and it's all just really well done. Although there is one in particular that is a bit weird. Out of all alien ships, this one knows something. Yeah, it's not an English-produced game. I'm kind of willing to let that one go, especially with how nice this art is. The rulebook could do to be written just a tiny bit better. It would be nice to have a reference to some of the stuff that's changed here in case you need like a reference, just in case you don't want to have to go digging through those again. And there are some bits that could do to be rewritten. Like, I was immensely confused as to how robots worked until I went and looked it up on the internet, because they can be a little bit rough from what it says in the book. But outside of that, Under Falling Skies is great. It's got a great puzzle. It's got great resource management ideas, that little bit of randomness to help make the game that little bit different every time. You can personally decide what the difficulty is going to be. You've got tons of choices in that regard, whether it be the different skies, different scenarios, different one-use powers to help you out, different cities with their own different ways to manage resources. Seriously, there is a lot of bloody cities. And it's just a genuinely engaging game. When you sit down, you're rolling, you're making these decisions, the aliens are getting ever closer, the slow encroachment of the mothership down the sky. It's all really well done, well paced, great to balance around the way you want the difficulty, and I enjoy it a lot. So yeah, I'm happy to recommend this one. It does a lot of good in a surprisingly small package, and even after I'd popped all of this stuff out, after I played through the campaign one time, I was like, this isn't going to go in the box very well. It actually does. And they even give you, to top it all off, 2 bags to help you keep track of what you've lost and what you've gained over the course of the campaign. It's a relatively tight fit, but it's still a relatively cozy fit. Nothing will really get damaged if this gets thrown around too much. Really well done. So yeah, that is Under Falling Skies. It's really well done. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Wanna bing bang. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.